안녕하세요. KC애틀 시청자 여러분, 리포터 민정입니다. 여러분, 시애틀하면 가장 먼저 떠오르는 게 무엇인가요? 마이크로소프트, 스타벅스, 그리고 바로 보잉이 아닐까 합니다. 시애틀에서 비행 역사를 한눈에 볼 수 있는 박물관, 비행 박물관에 나와 있습니다. 그럼 한번 들어가 볼까요? Tell us a little bit about the museum.
Well, the Museum of Flight is one of the largest aviation and space museums in the world. We're very lucky to be in a location like Seattle, which has one of the longest histories of aviation of any place in the world as well. Our main campus here is almost 15 acres, which includes about, 4 or 5 buildings. We have airplanes on the outside, we have airplanes on the inside, we have exhibits all around, and then some of our exhibits are buildings themselves. For example, we have the original Boeing factory here, which dates back to 1909. Our total collection we've got over 150 aircraft and spacecraft now. On top of that, literally thousands and thousands of smaller artifacts, and our photo archive is one of the largest anywhere with millions of images. Well, we have a few things here that you can't see anyplace else. Some of the most popular exhibits that we have here, we have the world's only example of its sort of Blackbird spy plane, dates from the 1960s, the world's fastest airplane. And we also have the first jet-powered Air Force One. So this plane dates back to President Eisenhower back in the late 1950s, and it was used by Eisenhower, Kennedy, Nixon, and Johnson. A lot of people might think that we are the Boeing Museum. We're not. We're a private nonprofit foundation, but we do have a fantastic collection of Boeing airplanes dating back to some of the very first examples, like that one up there, that float plane.
첫 여성 파일럿의 비행기로 유명한 라켓사의 엘렉트라를 볼 수 있었습니다.
It does date back to 1935. This is how old the airplane is, and we flew it here just last fall. So it's new to the collection. So normally used as an airliner, the cabin would be full of seats, and there would be space for cargo, things like that. Well, for her flight, she was flying long distances, so she wanted to have this extreme range. So she made room for extra gas tanks. So the interior was almost all gas tanks, and the only one in back was the navigator, and she was alone in the cockpit the whole time. There was almost no way to get from the cockpit back here. You had to kind of crawl through the gas tanks. And when she and the navigator wanted to communicate, they had this little pulley system here. He would write a note and then put it on the pulleys, and she would get the note. We have the best flight simulators that anyone can fly in the Seattle area. So this group here, these are all full motion simulators.
Can you get out? Can you walk?
항공박물관 곳곳에서는 우주 공간에서 실제로 사용된 다양한 전시물을 볼 수 있습니다.
They look like ordinary rocks, but they're from the moon. All this is just made to hold up the gas bag, so it would be lighter than air. So up here, this is more or less the cockpit and the crew quarters. And you also had passageways inside. So how would you like to have that job? You're standing on top of this thing, 20 or 30 degrees below zero. It's 60, 70 miles an hour wind going by, and your job is to stand up there and hopefully shoot down someone that's trying to shoot you.
실제로 우주 정거장에도 들어가 볼 수 있었습니다.
again, this is full scale. And the cargo bay here, for this vehicle, what they used it for lots of times was to find out if something fit. So sometimes the cargo, they wanted to make sure that everything was going to fit perfectly. So they would put it in here as sort of a practice. If you were to go outside the spacecraft, you'd have to get suited up and go in the airlock. This would be shut, and then they let all the air out and check your suits and all that stuff before you can go outside, and then it's just the opposite coming back. But this was the main living space for a crew of 7. Yeah. There's their sleeping bags. There's no real assigned sleeping spots. Everyone kind of, it was like camping out. These bins here, everybody had, one compartment for their own personal stuff, and then the rest was tools or equipment or whatever they needed for that particular mission. And Velcro was not invented by NASA. NASA used it an awful lot. So you see the blue Velcro, that was all NASA. But every crew member was assigned a different color. So if they had a personal item, and they're yellow, so okay, the yellow person could stick their things there. This is the kitchen, or the galley. Had an oven, had water, had a way to heat things up, and that was about it. And then they would, this would be sort of their dining area when they had a little time out and they could spend a little time together not working. This is the bathroom. Again, notice the different colors. So everyone had their own little towels to use and whatever. They would say that the first thing you leave behind on a space shuttle mission is your modesty, because there wasn't a lot of privacy on board.
조종석을 보기 위해서 위층으로 올라갔습니다.
Not very much different from a typical airliner at the time. About the same size, maybe even a little roomier than your typical 747, for example. For a pilot, it's going to seem very familiar. Same sort of controls, stick, rudder pedals. Instruments are about the same. Maybe a few more switches that you wouldn't find on an airplane. Where it gets different, though, and more like a spacecraft, is actually here. So this is where you start flying it in space. So you have these two things here to maneuver it, because as you remember, if you're in a dock with the space station, there's your docking port there. So now you need to be able to look this way and this way to be able to maneuver it in space. And then there was another station right behind you there. Watch your step. And that was used to maneuver this big arm out here. So that was like the crane that would operate to pick things up and move them in and out in the assembly of the space station. And that was operated from here, being able to look out there. This is a full-scale replica of one of the modules on board the space station. Well, this would be your view. If you had a few minutes off from work and you could just enjoy the view, you see the Earth go by. Stateroom. Quite a step up from the days of Apollo where you just slept where you worked. Here, at least you have some kind of privacy in your own little room.
우주선을 나와서 보잉 공장으로 향했습니다.
This is the original Boeing factory. The building dates back to 1909, and they started making airplanes here in 1915.
실내를 모두 돌아본 뒤 외부 정시장으로 향했습니다.
We have a Concorde supersonic airliner, which is very popular. It's the only one on the West Coast. There's very few that were ever made, so it's really special to be here in Seattle, and you have a chance to go on board it.
최초의 보잉 747 항공기, 대통령 전용기로 사용되었던 에어포스 1도 만날 수 있었습니다. 항공기와 우주선에 대해 모든 것을 보고 듣고 체험할 수 있는 곳. 항공박물관에 꼭 한번 다녀오시기 바랍니다.